Anthony, welcome to the Mindship Podcast. How are we doing?
I'm very well, Danny. I've got a little bit of a cough and cold, so hopefully that won't affect things too much. But other than that, I'm loving life, mate. How about yourself?
All good, all good. I was thinking before I was mapping the questions, I was like, actually, we've not seen each other for so long.
Mm,
I think last time we seen each other was at a conference way back when.
it was, and if I remember, it was not long after I started doing comedy, and you were like, "Oh, I'm going to do that. I'm definitely going to do comedy." So, how many gigs you done, Danny?
Yeah, I've done a massive number of zero. Absolutely. But it's still on the radar. It's still on the radar. And it was funny. I was speaking to my other half today. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've got Anthony on today. I'm looking forward to it. And she's like, "Oh, is that the person who does the comedy?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "He's definitely gonna beat my balls for like not jumping on this, and just he's gonna give me some shit for it for sure." So yeah, 20 seconds in, and here we are.
Yeah.
um, so I guess for me, I know who you. I know we've spoke for a few years, but maybe for my listeners, why don't you do a bit of intro, who you are, and kind of your background.
Sure. So, yeah, I'm Anthony. I've been in L&D for 23 years. It was easy to remember because it was the turn of the century. And I spent the first decade of that, I guess, kind of learning by observing people doing things in a certain way that I thought was the only way. So I did a lot of very traditional stand up, a lot of chalk and talk stuff, and got quite disillusioned with it after a while and ended up stepping away from it and doing loads of digital stuff. And then my life took a bit of an interesting turn in that I reached a point in my life where I decided I wanted to do a lot of different things at once. And it coincided with my marriage had come to an end, and that was fine. And we're in a better place than we ever were now. So that's all good. That worked out great. And that kind of triggered my mind going, you should be doing something that excites you. You should be doing something that's different. And so two things happened. One is I stopped training the way that I'd always done it. And two was I started doing stand up comedy. And those two things, I think, ever since, so it's now 5 years, have intersected more than I ever imagined they would. And it's been a really interesting journey the last 5 years.
Nice, nice. So I guess then this moves me on nicely to kind of your log line. If I was to ask you what your log line would be, what would be the one sentence that summarizes you, I
Okay.
guess?
I'm a man struggling to get to terms with the fact that I'm the same age as old people.
Same age as old people, and that's the thing what never changes,
I know,
unfortunately.
I know. I turned 50 last year, Danny. You're right, I don't look it. Thanks for saying.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because, people talk about a midlife crisis. I don't think I had a midlife crisis. I think I had a midlife epiphany that I wanted to do things very differently. Um, and I'm really glad I did. Not all of that was happy. Obviously, coming out of a marriage and stuff like that, it's not great. It's hard, but I'm living a very different me from the one that I'd
Mm.
been kind of doing for the previous, I don't know, 25 years or something like that. So, um, yeah, so it's kind of weird. So the reason I say I'm struggling to come to terms with being the same age as old people is that in my head, because I started doing something relatively recently, it all feels new and fresh and young. And I spend a lot of
Mm.
time with upcoming comedians who a lot of them are new, exciting, fresh, and young, which is very annoying. Got to admit, but yeah. So in my head, I'm back to being 19 again, and trying to
Okay.
learn how to do a new job and get my head around all that. It's just that my body doesn't agree with that anymore.
No, no, and I imagine there's a lot of imagine there's a lot of late nights. Maybe I mean,
Yeah,
maybe I'm making a massive assumption here,
yeah,
but
yeah.
lots of late nights.
Yeah. It's hard work. So yeah, I joined the comedy circuit, yeah, almost 5 years ago, and I'm nowhere near the level where I could do it as a full-time job. Whether that ever happens, I don't know. It would be nice. So yeah, so still doing a day job and out a lot in the evening. It is, yeah, it's hard work, but I think there's that old cliche, isn't there, about if you find something you love, you'll never work another day. It's that kind of thing. I never ever see going to a gig as work. which is good
Mm.
because half the time I'm not getting paid, so it's probably a good thing. But no, I genuinely enjoy it to the point where even 5 years in, I will, if I've got nothing else on, I'll go and watch a mate of mine, and go and watch a gig and just enjoy it as a punter still, and probably enjoy it even more now than I did before I started doing it because I have a newfound appreciation of it.
Mm. So then how do people do that? So I guess so I definitely had a midlife crisis at 30 for sure. Like it was terrible. Like yeah, thought the world's gonna end. And so afterwards you go, fucking hell, what was I even thinking? Like you don't know it until you're in
Mm,
it. Um, how did you manage to find that thing? Yours clearly is the comedy. It's
yeah.
something what lights you up inside, and yeah, you've got your day job, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the comedy aspects, like there's lots and lots of times, and I guess I find myself in this quite a lot at the moment. Like I want to say purpose, but it's not. It's something different. How do you find that? How did you go about finding it?
So I didn't know it was happening at the time, but when you look back, there were clues along the way, right? So the first one I probably should have realised was back in the 80s. My dad was an entertainer. And he
Oh,
did go full time. He went pro. He gave up his job, and he was a kind of singer, guitarist, comedian in the proper working men clubs type environment. And I used to go and roadie for him when I was a teenager, and I loved it. Loved being in amongst it. And then when I was a little bit older, tried to be a musician, but I have absolutely zero musical talent or the mindset to commit to getting good at it. Right. So I kind of parked that. And then when I became a trainer, um, I think I was getting a lot of that vibe from it. You're in a room, you're in control, people are listening to you. If you choose to, you can make it quite entertaining, you can make it quite funny, but it's really safe because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to give you a 3 on the happy sheet at the end of the day and say, "Bring better biscuits," right? That's as high stakes as it gets, right? But it was kind of scratching an itch, I guess. And then, as I said, I made a few life changes and found myself living alone. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know if I'm cut out to be single full time. Maybe I should try dating and see what
mm,
happens. And I remember vividly because dating's all online now. It's a weird world, right? But I guess the good side of that is it's a lot less random than back in the day when we were dating. It was just like, who's had as many to drink as me? That'll do, right? So now you kind of you like building a search criteria, like you're telling the algorithm what you're looking for. And mentally, I'd made a decision that if I was going to get into a relationship with someone, they needed to get what I do, right? Understand that I do a job that involves schlepping up and down the country and sometimes staying overnight and working weird hours and stuff. And somebody that I could have a laugh with, and that was it. Really, that was my criteria. And very quickly, I matched online with a woman who works in HR, so totally gets the day job, right? Totally gets what
oh,
it's like to work in a people function and all the rest of it, and is a semi-professional comedian, right? So
wow.
this happens, and I'm like, this must be like the universe smiling on me or something. We get on well, and then obviously being a bloke, of course I said, "Oh yeah, this comedy thing that you do, yeah, I've always fancied doing that. I reckon I'd be good at that." And she was like, "Oh, come on then, let's see what you're made of. Go and do it." Very much like I said
Oh,
to you when we spoke
yeah.
about it, right? And obviously at the time, like this is a world that I know nothing about. So I was like, well, what do you mean go and give it a go? What do you do? Just ring up the guy who books live at the Apollo and say, I fancy having a go? And she was like, no, there's a system. So she introduced me to a few Facebook forums. For some reason, the whole comedy industry runs on Facebook. Nobody knows why, but it does. It's like the LinkedIn for comedy. She introduced me to a few groups. I started to see some open mic nights that were relatively local. So I thought, I'll go along. I'll watch. I'll see what happens. And maybe that'll be enough, right? And I'll be going, oh, there's no way I could put myself through that. Some of those guys had a really hard time. It was awful. I'm never going to do that. That didn't happen. What happened was I rocked up to an open mic night, and about 9:30, I heard the compere speak to the landlord and go, "Think we're probably going to have an early night tonight. A couple of acts have dropped out." And then the next thing I heard was me going, "I'll do 5 minutes."
Ooh.
So I did. And again, I thought, this will be it. Right, I'll do this. I'll die a death. And I'll never do it again. Yeah, that
Mm.
didn't happen either. So, uh, so I did this gig. It went tremendously well. Unbeknownst to me, the majority of the audience, of about 12, it has to be said, were other acts, were other comedians who all run their own open mic nights. And they were all like, "Oh, how come I've never met you before? You know, how many gigs have you
Mm.
done?" And I was like, "Oh, that was my first gig." They were like, "No, don't be ridiculous. That was really good. I run a night on Tuesday in this place, and I run a night on Thursday." And very quickly, I was like, "Yeah, great, I'll do this." And so I got into it really, really quickly. Meanwhile, Dawn, my other half's like getting great paid bookings, hit left, right, and centre, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to Aberystwyth on a Monday night to do 10 minutes for nothing." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, that's how it works, mate. Yeah, you enjoy it because you're going to be doing this for a while." And I just kind of got really immersed in the whole thing, and then very quickly realized that a lot of the skills I've been using, not just in the training room, but also in the corporate world, would be really useful in this industry. So there are some great things about comedy. It's the most democratic world you could ever dream of, because if you want to set up a comedy night, you just find a room somewhere and you stick a mic up, and you, lo and behold, you're a comedy promoter, and that's it. There are no barriers to entry, which also means it's kind of got a meritocracy to it, right? Because you
Mm.
set it up and it's rubbish and nobody comes and everyone hates it, it's going to die, right? Nobody's going to enjoy that. But actually, if you're reasonably good at what you do, it gets better, and you build your skills. The skills I was seeing lacking was in all of the organization and the marketing and the promoting, and just the understanding of how to make a great experience, which I'd learned through L&D, of like, you know what, if you make people feel really welcome and comfortable and relaxed, then they're open to new
Mm.
experiences, right? And if what you do elicits some response, and not being one to name drop, but we are absolutely talking about effective context here. Make people feel something, and they'll remember it, right? They'll have a great experience, and they'll go away. And the reason I knew this was true is because even though I'm fascinated by comedy, I will go to a comedy night, have a great time, and the next morning I can't remember a single joke that comedian said. I just know it was great. And it's like, that is how learning experiences work, right? Who cares about is it this process? Is it that process? Actually, what did you feel? How did you come out of that? Do you feel more prepared? Do you feel more comfortable? So there was all of this going on in my head, all this bouncing around. And above all else was, I could do a much better job of running nights than some of these idiots, right? They're
Yeah.
rocking up in a pub. They've got some Argos karaoke machine and a microphone they've stolen from their 3-year-old toddler, and there's no lights, and it started half an hour late, and then the acts were awful, I just thought I could do a better job. So that was really where the world started to combine, and I was like, I really enjoy this. I love performing, but I love the
Mm.
business of it. So I went very quickly from being what's called an open spot comedian, so just doing 10 minutes in the middle of a bill, not getting paid for it, but just doing it for experience, into being a promoter, where now I've gone from in the very early days, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could get on the bill of this comedy night because that'll save me paying. That was like
Mm.
objective number one. Then objective number two was, wouldn't it be great if I'm on a bill with an act that I really, really, really like, and that would be really good. Very quickly, I was in the world of, wouldn't it be great if I could just put on a show and book acts that I really like, and I'll be the boss and I'll put that show on, and I can do whatever I want on then. I can be the compere, or I can do 10 minutes of material. I do whatever I like. I could just sit back and enjoy the show, and not only not get paid, not only not have to pay, but I might actually get paid for watching this. So, and it's just fascinated me over the last 5 years how many things cross over. So the more I do comedy, the sharper my brain becomes. So when I'm now in a training room, I can react to stuff way quicker. Very little will throw me now. Somebody asks something that's a little bit off piece, and my brain can react quickly and join the dots and go, oh, I see where you're coming from. That's why you've said that, because this, and this. And that's exactly the skill you need as a compere, because you'll be talking to someone in the crowd and they'll say something and it'll spark a thought, and then you go down that track. And the reverse is true. The more I think about building great experiences around, build a really strong narrative, take people on that journey, make sure they know where they are, keep them comfortable, elicit some response, make some emotions. They work back and forth all the time. So I genuinely think I'm a better L&D professional by being a better comedian, and I'm a better comedian by understanding learning experiences. So it's like an amazing match made in heaven for me.
So I guess there's loads there where I want to pick apart. But I guess the first one is, you've kind of talked. There's an element of kind of ad lib, right? Like being able
Mm.
to pin and move and flow with it. But I guess I want to go back to the start of it, which is the 5 minutes. You said I'll do 5 minutes. I mean, my asshole would have been like a mouse's ear at that point. I would have been like, nope, nope, don't do it. But like, had you prepped
Yeah,
for that, or was it just this off it?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'd been thinking about it a while, and me and Dawn had started a relationship, so I'd seen her say out how it was structured, and it was when Nick Shackleton Jones's book was about to come out,
Mm,
How People Learn, and on his book launch invite, he'd put "Bring a talent," right? And I
yeah.
thought, here's the opportunity, right? I will come along. I'll do some stand up. This open mic came up first. So I was like, right, if I can write 5 minutes and perform it, then when I do Nick's thing, it won't be the first time I've ever done it, and that'll be a little bit better. So again, the two worlds combined, even to get me started in comedy, L&D was the thing that started me.
Yeah.
So I'd got it in my head. I'd not gone as far as like actually writing it down or practicing or rehearsing or whatever, but I knew the ideas and I knew the structure. And I guess, again, from being a trainer for 20 years, I can probably hold quite a lot of stuff in my brain that I'm going to say and know where things are going to go, and do that kind of, while I'm talking about one thing, I'm thinking about what I'm going to be saying next. Because I've had 20 years of, right, I'm saying this, but I'm actually thinking we're going to go for a break in 10 minutes, and this guy at the back is really not interested, but they're okay, and all of that sort of stuff.
Uh,
So yeah, so it was kind of there. I went on. I did quote unquote 5 minutes. It was actually more like eight. Um, and in the parlance of comedy, smashed it. It was really good. It was honestly really, really good. And yes, it went from there.
so I remember the Nick one because I was
Yeah.
there. I remember we talked, didn't we, on LinkedIn about should I do it, should I not? And he was like, yeah, you're gonna have time, like definitely. And I was like, this is gonna be brilliant. And I remember witnessing it. I was like, I remember you was up on stage. I remember just thinking, it's fucking the fact that you can do that is quite like, I guess if you're in L&D, there's an art to presentation and like presenting and having fun and flowing. But to do it in a group of peers, like, that's something different.
Yeah.
So, like, did you feel that, or was it just a case of, "Actually, no, it's just people?"
I think I managed to trick myself into just going, it's just a bunch of people. And so I know now there's lots of comedians that really feel the pressure if there's people they know. But I've never experienced that. Like, I've performed my set in front of my mum, in front of my kids, and it's not entirely safe for work material, but it just doesn't affect me that way. So yeah, my brain doesn't process it like that, and it was just, you've got a performance to do. It's just a bunch of people that we find. Had I thought it through, I'd be like, yeah, it's just a bunch of people who get paid doing broadly what you're about to do, and probably the best in the industry at it. But my brain didn't do that, luckily.
Oh, man. Oh, man. And then I guess I wanna needle into more, but there's a couple of questions what I need to ask right at the start because if not, I'll forget. So, first question is, I want you to roll a dice in your head
Hmm.
and pick a number between 1 and 10.
Let's go for three.
Number three. Perfect. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a question now. Don't need the answer to that question just yet, but I will need it when I ask it again later on. So the question you've picked is, um, what's the one lie you're still telling yourself?
Okay.
So I'll let you ponder on that one for now. Um, so going back to kind of a comedy, like there's, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking of the structure. So I remember we had a talk at a conference, and I was like, oh, I'm collecting notes for when I get to do it. I've got this Google note document of all these little ideas, these little thoughts where I want to run with it. Um, but kind of listening to you there, there's something around the structure.
Hmm.
There's something around how you create that narrative and how you create the structure and the punchlines and stuff. I guess what's the similarities and the differences between doing that for learning and doing that for comedy?
So I think genuinely the only difference is the outcome, right? In comedy, the outcome is you want to get a laugh, right? That's it pretty much. I mean, there are constraints. There are things that would get a laugh, but you wouldn't say because it would cross boundaries and stuff like that. Whereas I guess in learning, it's more about being that catalyst to change something, right? So somehow you've influenced them to do something differently, better, think about it, whatever your outcome happens to be. Other than that, I'm not sure there's an awful lot of difference, and certainly around the language that you use and considering the narrative and things like that. You can take comedy can be as simple as like a one-liner joke, right? And I say simple in the respect that it's not very long. It's not simple. It's a very complicated art, but there is a way of doing it, right? So there are a couple of things that make one-liner jokes really well. So first of all, you have what's called the seesaw principle, where the setup and the punchline should never be equal, right? Because then it just
Okay.
doesn't land as well. So you can have a long setup and a short punchline, or you can have a short setup and a long punchline. As long as they don't balance, it generally works. And then the second rule of that in a one liner joke is the funny bit should probably, or in almost all circumstances, come right at the end of the joke. So you're leading people up to something and then bang goes in a different direction. Right. So those things are true of a one liner. And then as you start to build stories, there are other things, if you're going to take people on a journey, make sure that it's really clear where you are. Punctuate your stories with little jokes along the way. If you're leading to a big gag, that's great, but make sure your hit rate's right so you take people on that journey. And that's very similar with a learning experience, right? You might have a big outcome at the end, but on the way, having little milestones. Oh, and we've managed to achieve this little bit now, haven't we? Oh, let's move forward a bit. Particularly if you think about something like systems training or something like that.
Mm.
You want to take people on that journey, but you want them to have a sense of achievement, I guess, along the way. And it's similar in comedy. You want them to have those laughs along the way, that they know they're on a journey and they know things are going to happen and they remain committed to it. So you don't lose them halfway because they're like, oh, this is boring. There might be a great punchline at the end, but I'm not listening anymore. Same with learning experiences, right? You can't do an entire day of you'll get it by the end of the day. Don't you worry, you'll get it. I know it's really confusing now, and I know you're not understanding it, but in 7 hours' time, it's all going to fall into place. It just doesn't work like that, right? So it's very, very similar, and yeah, just a different outcome.
It's interesting. So when I very first got into learning, and um, when I think about the narrative of how you get into learning and how you get there and how you found yourself there, all the way to where you are now, like that experience is just a wild one in general, because I don't think anyone ever goes, I'm going to in L&D and I'm in learning or wherever else. And I remember the very first time I got there, I was lucky. My trainer was Sakib. In fact, he's wrote the kind of foreword in my book. Um, and there's some traits which I always remember now, where I'm like, he was a fantastic storyteller.
Yep.
He constantly nudged the kind of jokes. Going back to your point there, kind of he nudged the little jokes to get us there. And I remember when I very first met him, I was like, it was a proper I want to be like that person
Hmm.
like moment.
Yep.
I was like, because the way he brought people into the narrative, and like you physically seen people lean
Yes.
in, and there's a
Absolutely.
magic to
There
that.
is, and I experienced exactly the same thing before I became a trainer. I was fortunate enough to be trained by someone who was exactly that. And yeah, he would literally get the group in a little horseshoe around him, and he'd sit in front, and
Mm.
you would absolutely see people leaning forward to listen to his stories. And some of them were great, and some of them weren't. But he was great at that aspect of his job. He was just so good. And I think that goes in, right? You get affected by that, and you think, oh, that's a way of doing it. What I wasn't good at in the early days, and I kind of alluded to, was understanding that that's it, right? You tell a great story, you tell a great narrative, and the learning hangs off that. I was far too focused, which I think a lot of trainers are when they start. Of I've got 76 slides, so I've got to get through them. I've got to hit every learning objective, and I've got to get a 4 or 5 on the happy sheet, and then I've done a great job. And it took me a long time to realize that nearly hitting every learning objective is as bad as hitting none. And you're better off hitting
Mm.
one or two, and they might be different ones or twos for everybody in that room. But if everybody's taken something away, you've achieved something rather than nobody quite taking everything away. So,
Yeah.
and I think that comes back to that storytelling bit of actually you'll all take different bits out of this story, but as long as you take something away with you and it enriches you in some way, then we've achieved, right?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. It's exactly that, right? It's that kind of output versus
Yeah.
outcomes. Like, and there's yeah, that whole tick list of getting these done is like, well, no one cares. No one really cares. And I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, um, when I talk about experience design and stuff, like there's a narrative of you lose track of time.
Mm.
And I think just listening to you then, like whenever I go to watch a good show, like time is forgotten about.
Hmm.
There's something around that time, it's that thing when you have a busy day and you lose
Yeah.
track of time.
Yeah.
It's because you're in it, you're
Oh,
focused,
on
and
stage, it's just unbelievable. So, I did a 10-minute set at Hot Water in Liverpool last night, and I've got a watch that's got a vibrating alarm. It's got a countdown. It's like every comedian has the same watch. It's a Casio watch, and it's famous that it's got a countdown timer, and then it just vibrates. Right, so there's no sound. You can just feel that your time
oh,
is up. Right.
okay.
I genuinely 100% felt it go off and went, "Ah, I must have set that wrong." And then luckily, the club also they have a light that only the comedian can see, as a red light that goes on. And as my watch went off, the light went on. I was like, "No, that genuinely is 10 minutes," and I just could not believe it. So yeah, the time just goes, and even more so when I'm comparing at the start of a show. We traditionally compares will do 10 minutes at the start of the show, and all your job is to settle the audience down, make sure they know what the rules are, get them comfy, get them ready to listen to jokes, right? So that your first act has the best possible chance. The amount of times I'm like, well, I suppose I better bring an act on, and then I'll go, whoa, 15 minutes, wow. And it's just, it honestly, the time just disappears. It's incredible.
So it gets me thinking about the warm up, the warm up app, the compare, the whatever before whatever else. And I guess I'm not even thinking this out straight, but in my mind there's kind of there's stuff what you see on television, which is like the 8 out of 10 cats, right? There's a panel which is springing off each other. That for me is where I would like to sit. If that was me, I'm like I can spring better off
Okay.
people getting up on the stage and doing it. I can do it, but I get there's a preference. But there's something around that compare thing, which is around creating that safe space
Hmm.
first and foremost. And I guess when you think about people who would just do traditional kind of facilitation and whatever else, and the icebreakers or energizers or whatever else, there's something around the energizer actually. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's that safe space.
Absolutely. That's all you're doing. You're basically setting the rules out, right? So, I'm the facilitator, so I will introduce what we're going to do. I'll give you instructions, then I expect you to play your part, and then at the end of that, we'll probably have a review of it, and you need to be open and honest. And all of that, I think, is just happening subtly through
Mm.
anything like that. And you're right, it doesn't matter. Who cares what the energizer is? It is. That's why we call them icebreakers, right? That's what it's for. It's just to establish the rules of engagement. That this isn't some 50-year-old bloke who's going to read off a PowerPoint for 8 hours. Actually, there's something else
Mm.
going on there. And again, I don't use those activities anymore because I think my skills from doing stand up mean that I can just talk to them for a few minutes,
Yeah.
get to know them, break that ice a different way, and then get straight into it. I am doing it. I'm just not doing it in such a formalized, here is an
Yeah.
activity. I'm having a conversation with them instead.
So I want to take you right back to your childhood. You know, you mentioned that your dad was an
Hmm.
entertainer and stuff like that. And I guess let me take you all the way back there. Um, if I was to ask two of your friends at the time, what would Anthony be when he grows up? What do you reckon he would have said at that time?
None of them would have said an entertainer, because I think, like many introverts, which I am, I'm almost off the scale introvert. There is a massive difference between social interaction and performing. And I'm very comfortable with performing. I'm not nearly as comfortable with the social interaction side. And actually, I see that a lot. I see that a lot in comedy. That people are larger than life on stage, and then backstage they're really quiet. They're on their phone. So none of them would have said that. I was quite bright as a kid. I still do a lot of quizzing, and that started when I was quite young. So knowing a lot of stuff has been a trait of mine since I was very young. So I think people probably would have said something around that. I was quite into languages as well when I was younger, not so much now, but an interpreter, a translator, something like that probably would have been what they would have expected.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting. I think that's the first I've ever heard someone say that on the podcast. So there you go. Um, so then I guess going back to that point of, backstage, everyone's kind of, a lot of comedians are kind of yeah, they're not the show what they put in front. But I guess the optics of it, and maybe it's just my optics, is backstage you've got these really kind of creative people and they're funny and they're all bouncing off each
Hmm.
other. And I guess is that not the case? Is it
Some
like
are and some aren't. So on any lineup, you'll get some that are all bouncy and excitable and all that. I would say it's the minority, to be fair. Often when I'm backstage in a green room, there'll be a little bit of polite, "Oh, how you doing? Haven't seen you for ages. Last time we were together, we were at this. Oh, that was a lovely gig. Oh, we had a great time. Blah 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 blah." And after a couple of minutes, then it will just die down, and then you will just sit quietly. Someone will get a notebook out and start writing ideas. Someone will be on their phone. Yeah, they're normally quite quiet places. And same afterwards as well. It's not kind of this rock and roll lifestyle of, we all come off stage and let's go party. You definitely got a buzz. It's hard to relax after a gig, but it's not kind of hardcore. People are like, oh, that was really good fun. I'm going to shoot now. I want to get home. See you later. And that's it.
wow? Which is the complete opposite to which I picture it to be like. I'm like, well, haven't you? It's a bit like when you do a presentation. Like the best one I can remember when we was doing the one when I did it with UEFA at Learning Technologies, where they had the little smell bags which I handed
Yeah,
out.
yeah, I remember
And I
that.
remember coming off there, I was like, "That landed. It worked well." And I was a buzzer. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
cool." But then, like you say, you couldn't settle down. I was
no,
like, still on that high, but that's got to be hard going from you've just smashed
yeah,
your set or whatever, and then like you're like, okay, now I've got to.
yeah.
How do you overcome that?
And it's I don't think everyone experiences it, but I have this weird, almost like post gig imposter syndrome kick in. So I don't get particularly nervous before a gig. I'm fine with that. In the moment, I'm enjoying it. The second I leave the stage, my brain goes, "That wasn't as good as you thought it was. You weren't getting as many laughs as you thought there, mate. You need to work harder." And to the point where I sometimes have to record gigs and watch them back and go, "Oh no, actually, you did get laughs. Oh, that was good. Oh, that did land," because my brain just immediately goes, "Nah, it was terrible. That was awful." And it's odd. Other acts get it the other way around, where they're like leading up to a gig, they're like, "Oh my god, I can't do this. It's going to be terrible. They're going to hate me," and then they're fine. And then they come off and they're like, "Yeah, that was great. Loved it." Me very quickly, like even from walking from the stage to going back to the green room, it can go. And I will often have to turn to someone and go, "Was that all right?" And they're like, "Me, yeah, it was
Wow.
great. It was really good." I'm like, "You sure?" It's very odd. I suppose it keeps you grounded, right?
Yeah, I mean, it keeps you sharp. But again, I'm making we're both making these connections. But it reminds me of when I very first did training. So obviously I'm not in learning development no more, but back in the day I was a heavy facilitator with Sakib, Sahid, and Greg. And you'd always wait after you'd done your 3 weeks induction to look at the happy
Yeah,
sheets. And you would ignore all the good stuff and you'd zoom in right on that one stupid remark. And it's like you focus on it too
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Um so other than recording, how do you I guess it's a two-part question, but after other than recording your set, like how do you be kind to yourself, I guess?
That's a very good question. So we have a law in comedy. It's called Millikan's Law. It's named after Sarah Millikan. And the
Okay.
law is it doesn't matter how well you smash it or how badly you die, by 11 o'clock the next morning, you have to move on. You have to get it out of your head, right? You can have the greatest gig ever, you can have the worst gig ever. You have got until 11 o'clock the following morning to do what you want with it. And then it's gone. You focus on the next one. And that is really healthy because you can really get in your own mind. And I've seen acts do it where they have a run of bad gigs. And you know what? The greatest comedian in the world, of which I am nowhere near, but the best comedians I've seen them have a bad night. And the reality is, it's just a bad night. And you've just got to get it out of your head. Likewise, you could smash it tonight. And if you allow your brain to take you into the next gig in that mindset, you are probably going to die because you'll be way too confident. And that's why sometimes you see comedians blaming audiences and stuff like that. You're like, oh,
Okay.
that gag was way better than you've given it credit for. Nope, that's not how it works. They get to judge how good the stuff is, not
Yeah.
you. So yeah, just getting it out of your head, and that's probably a useful lesson generally. I think when you do good work, when you do not so good work, if you get some feedback you're not so keen on, process it, but then move on. Right? It doesn't get to influence the rest of your life.
It sounds to me like there's an element of just humbleness what it can give you. It can give you a humble pie.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but then in the same breath, like you spend it, and I guess I want to talk about no part of this question, but you do this. You come up with your content where you're going to kind of do for your show, and then there's something around how do you know when to actually it needs development versus actually no, it just does not work. How
Yeah,
do you
I mean that is a great
do that
question
balance?
to which we don't always know the answer, but this is why open mic nights, new material nights, and things like that exist, where it's fairly low stakes. Your audience hasn't paid very much. There might be a lot of acts. Some of them will be great, some of them won't. That's where you test stuff. So generally speaking, if you write something that you think is good, you will take it out to an open mic, a new material night, and if it works, great, we'll try it. If it doesn't work, try it again because you never know. Could be just on that night you didn't deliver it right or the audience just didn't go for it, whatever. Generally speaking, if you've tried it a few times and it's not working, it probably doesn't work. It's probably funnier in your head than it was coming out of your mouth. Ditch it, or just park it because you might think of another way of doing it later.
Mm,
Same goes if it works, right? If it works, try it. If it keeps working, great. At some point, and this always happens. At some point, your brain will go, say it differently, even if it's working. And sometimes that's the click where you're like, oh, that's taking it from good to great. That was the thing.
uh,
And you've just sometimes got to trust the process that your brain will do it. And it's amazing how often it happens when I'm watching acts that I know their sets inside out. They'll come out and I'll go, you said it that way tonight instead of that way. And they're like, yeah, it works much better, doesn't it? And you're like, yeah, 6 months I've been doing that joke and I thought it was fine, but now I said it that way. And it's really odd. Sometimes you do it consciously. Sometimes, you'll sit there and go, how does this work? No, that's not right. That's not the right words. What is it? I remember, right, it's one of the first gags I wrote. It might even have been in that set that you saw, where I was writing a bit about getting yellow sticker reduced stuff from the supermarket, and I wanted the right items to be funny. And I knew some of the science behind it is there's a thing called a rule of three. So if you go this, and this, it's funny, especially if the third thing in the list is like odd or different or doesn't quite fit. That's a general rule of thumb. And I also know that consonants are funny. That's a weird thing, isn't it? There you go. Learned something tonight. And I spent a whole week thinking of the three things I would buy that would be the funniest. And when I settled on it, I was like, that's it. I know that's it. And the three things were I went to the supermarket, bought these things that were all reduced. I ended up with mackerel, falafel, and a multi pack of Yakult. And it's just the poetry of it. It just
Yeah,
works, and the absurdity of it. Right? There are three things that don't really belong together, and they've got the right number of syllables. They've got the right consonants. But it took me ages to write that. I was like, it started out with whatever was true. Oh, I bought a manky melon and a box of Jaffa cakes, which was mildly
yeah,
amusing, right? And then it
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
built to mackerel, falafel, multi-pack of Yakult. I don't know. I don't know why. And 5 years later,
Works.
they're the three things I buy.
Which this kind of leads me on to my next question, which is there's a creativity to this, like, and again, I don't know this world half as nearly as much as you do, but there's something around the different types of comedian you are. Like, I think for me, I would like to see myself as like more of an
Hmm.
observation, someone who like just human behavior. But I guess where do you go? I guess where do you find the stimulus for content, and maybe walk us through kind of your process of coming up
Yeah,
with this
yeah,
content and
yeah. If
stuff.
if you were Richard Herring, that would have been where do you get your crazy ideas from? Yeah, so it can come from a number of sources. So sometimes it's a true story where something funny has happened, and then you build more things that are plausible. They don't have to have
Okay.
happened, but they fit the context. So in my club set, my 20-minute set, I do a story of a holiday to Bulgaria, and most of it is true. None of it happened to me; it all happened to my dad. Right. So,
Okay.
and I love telling that story because my dad died sort of 8 years ago. So it's nice. It kind of keeps him alive.
Mm,
Um, and so there are little bits of it that are genuinely true. But to actually sell the bits that are true, I had to write bits that aren't true. And then it's right, well, how do you find the funny in that bit then? What's funny
yeah.
about that? What's funny about that? So now it's probably about a 13-minute story of me going on this holiday, but at least once a minute there's a gag there, right? Something happened. Oh, that's quite funny, and it's got some repeating gags and some callbacks and some props, and I love doing it. It's not finished. I don't think any bit ever is, but so that started with a genuine true thing, which is mildly amusing. If I tell you the mildly amusing bit, right, and then how much work I had to do to make that work, the mildly amusing thing is my dad went to a karaoke bar that was run by the Bulgarian mafia,
Right.
did really well. They asked him to come back the following night. He didn't want to, and then he was worried that he might have upset the Bulgarian mafia, right? That's the setup. The punchline in the real world is later in the week, he was sat sunbathing and thought he'd been shot by the Bulgarian mafia when a disposable lighter exploded in his pocket. Right? Now, that is a funny anecdote you could tell down the pub, right? It gets a laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Picture
Yeah,
it.
you can
Yeah.
imagine it happening, right? Now, the first couple of times I told it, that's pretty much the essence. It was like a 2-minute story. Never got a laugh, not a proper laugh. And the reason I think was because a lighter exploding in your pocket is not something that people will have experienced. Right? It's very unusual. It's
Mm,
very rare. It's plausible. It could have happened, but it sounded fake. Sounded like
yeah.
I'd made it up to fit the story of he thought he'd been shot by the Bulgarian mafia. So now I have to have lots of other things that lead towards it. So the lighters get mentioned half a dozen times in the story about how cheap they are.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's a little bit of embellishment where a Bulgarian sex worker gets brought into the story and other stuff. But by adding all those little bits, the payoff at the end is much bigger, and it just works. So yeah, so that's one route is you can do that. Take a true story and then find the funny in it. That works. Sometimes an idea just pops in your head. It might be like a play on words, a little pun or something like that, and it can be just a really short gag. You can do that, and then again, you could build that up. Um, I'm doing a bit at the moment. And you did say it was okay to use a bit of fruity language, so I'm going to use the word nonce. Okay, so I had this idea, right, that this started in May. You remember in May, like we had loads of bank holidays, like we had 3 in May, and it was because of the coronation, right?
Yep.
So I had this thought in my head that was like, all right, I might not be a royalist, but I am a fan of bank holidays, so actually they can stick around a bit. And then for some reason, I was thinking about a certain member of the royal family who, I won't libel, and the word nonce popped into my head. And then my brain went to, what if we celebrated nonce fire night instead of bonfire night? And like, it sounds like it works, right?
Yeah.
So now I do a bit about, wasn't May good? We had all these bank holidays, the royal family give us extra bank holidays, but will we get a bank holiday when they finally catch him? Right. And that gets a laugh in
Mm.
itself.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
I'm like, no, because, right, we don't have a bank holiday between August and Christmas. So what we could do is we could take Guy Fawkes night. Notice the phrase in there, right? So this is a good comedy thing. Don't give away your punchline. So I won't call it bonfire night. I'll call it Guy Fawkes night, right? We take Guy Fawkes night, we upgrade it into a full bank holiday, we celebrate when we caught the prince, and we call it Nonspire night. Boom, laugh, right? And then my brain goes, well, what would you do on Nonspire night, right? So then I go to, right, fast forward 200 years, and the kids are like, oh, Daddy, why do we celebrate Nonspire night? I'm like, wow. 200 years ago, an evil prince was stealing all the children. Like, it sounds like a fable, then, right? And then, oh yeah, we do penny for the nonce, don't we, Dad? And like, yeah, we do, but you're not allowed to spend it on sweeties. So you start to then build, like, where would that
Yeah.
go? And it goes to, yeah, there's all sorts of all of the stuff about fireworks night or bonfire night. Then you just flip. And then it ends with, and at the end of the night, we all go for a meal at Pizza Express, right? So he's got a nice little conclusion
Yeah.
to it. That literally just started with, nonce fire night sounds like bonfire night. That was it.
I mean, the layers and the layering of a narrative around the words, right? Like that's, I guess, the way I kind of see this, and I don't know if this makes sense, but like, so dyspraxic over here,
Hmm.
like there's my vocab isn't as rich as other people's vocab, and that's not an excuse. It's just it isn't as well. I'm lazy. Um, but there's something around being able to like there's a manipulation of the
Mm.
words, right? And I was speaking to someone who Mark, it was on podcast, it's not out yet, and he talks around. He uses comedy a lot. He doesn't use it. He's not a comedian, but uses the comedy. He uses comedy stores to run training and ab lib training and stuff like that. And he says because the environment is set up for safety, it's set
Yeah.
up for manipulation of kind of just the rooms are often set up and it's got that kind of grittiness to
Hmm.
it. But I guess there's still something with the manipulation of the word and the language. And I guess, I was just listening to you then, I was capturing something like it sounds like there's a unique language to comedy
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. I think there is. And because often what you're doing is you're setting up a situation and you're playing with people's imagination, and then the punchline is, oh, it's not what you thought it was. And that can be funny in
Mhm.
itself. So a lot of one-liner gags are like that. There's an amazing comedian called Gary Delaney. He's without shadow of a doubt, the best one-liner comedian in the world. And a lot of his gags are quite punchy. They're quite rude, but very very clever in their thinking. And I think one of the greatest ones he's ever done. And again, I apologise because it's almost it's not an offensive gag. It's a play on words, but you could take offence. He says, "Oh, earlier today, I filled my escort with diesel. She died." And it's just such a clever gag, right?
Yeah.
Because everything's leading to he's talking about a car, and then
Just
he's like, "Oh, not that kind of escort." Yeah. Or another one of his that I absolutely adore is, my grief counsellor died yesterday, but fortunately he was so good at his job I didn't give a shit.
Oh my days! I've never come across him. I'm writing him down.
Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah, look him up. and all of his material, it's all one liners, so you get the gag rate is just phenomenal.
Uh-huh.
And his process is he will take stuff to a new material night, and he has three bins in front of him. Every gag is written on an index card, and he'll do the gag, and if it absolutely works 100%, it goes in bin A, and if it kind of works, it goes in bin B, and if it doesn't work at all, it goes in bin C. And then the following night, he throws all the bin C's away, and he starts again, and he just keeps going
Wow.
until every gag is in bin A, and that's his set. So it takes
Jeez.
forever, and he's doing like two jokes a minute, so it's a lot of work.
Wow. There's something that, again, we're making links, but there's something around kind of community,
Hmm.
which I want to kind of needle in on. And I think it depends on where you are within the community. Like, I think, when you think about L&D, HR, just corporate, and then there's a community of
Hmm.
comedians. Like, whatever type of comedian you are, there's definitely a community there,
Oh
like you
yeah,
mentioned on Facebook. Um, and I feel like this is a leading question, but take it wherever you want to take it. But is there something around each community tends to have dicks in there? There tend to be some people in there who are
yeah,
gobshites, and I guess how is that handled? Because I think when we talk about L&D and whatever else, we go, it's a little village.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's
but I imagine with comedians, it's a bit sharper. But I could be lying. I could be making.
um to some degree, yeah. I mean, there are what we always say in comedy is comedy is subjective, but the level you're at is not, right? It is objective, right?
Mm,
So whether I like a particular comedian or not, I can still tell you how good they are at what they do, right? So, are they open mic level? Are they filling stadiums? There's a
mm,
massive difference. So you've got that. So, there are lots of comedians. I don't find them funny, but audiences do. So brilliant, great, bang on, fantastic. There's comedians that do material that I would never go anywhere near because it just would not work with my personality, but it works for them, and that's brilliant. But equally, yeah, there are people who are really nice to work with, which I've got to say is about 90% of comedians are really nice people. Um, it's an interesting one because it's kind of competitive in that everybody's trying to get a slot on a bill, but the reality is it's not directly competitive. It's very rarely you or them, right? It's just I'm just going to build a bill that works for that night. So, I'm going to have a one-liner. I'm going to have people with different backgrounds. I'm going to put some diversity in and all the rest of it. And there are billions of gigs, so you could get very bitter about not getting a particular gig. Just apply for more. Just be better at what you do. There are, of course, people in there who are not nice. There's a few of those. Some of them are at quite a high level. One of them might have been on Channel 4 recently. Um, there are some nasty people, uh,
yeah.
but more so, and this definitely does live in both worlds. There are people who are just a bit deluded and need some direct feedback, who just think they're better than they actually are. And
Mm,
I've seen that in L&D as well. I've seen trainers. I've sat through courses thinking, "Oh my God, this person is dreadful." This is
yeah.
the material's fine. It's just you're delivering it awful. And we've all been there. We've all had to sit through 7 hours of health and safety training by somebody who couldn't train their way out of a wet paper bag. It happens on the comedy circuit. I guess it gets filtered quicker on the comedy circuit because people can literally walk out.
Mm,
They can vote with their feet. They can not come back. They can tell the promoter they thought that act was rubbish. So I guess in that way, it's a little bit sharper. It does weed people out. It's not to say, that there are some bad comedians that have been around forever. They'll only ever reach a certain level. That's all it is. They'll do an open mic for a promoter once, and they'll never get rebooked. But then
yeah.
6 months later, someone else will start a night, and they'll book them, and then it just works like that. So, but yeah, I'd say the vast majority of the community, in both senses, are lovely people who are there to add value to the community as a whole and not be selfish. I think that's true of both of
Mm.
those worlds.
So then, how does it stand with copying other people's content?
Oh,
And and I guess this is the reason why I'm going with this is, I think we've all had people take our content and reword bits and say that it was theirs. I've recently on LinkedIn, I've seen someone who's got a big network. I'm not even going to use thought leader, but someone's got a big network basically get exposed for taking 10 people's one person's piece of content and then they basically worded copy and copy and copy and just put their name on it. Like it was literally they didn't even try and hide it. They just copy and pasted. But I know in comedy that's like the
Oh
sacred,
yeah,
like
yeah.
do not
You
cross
just
that.
don't do it. Um, it used to happen, which I've learned recently. So I spent a little bit of time with a guy who was on the circuit in the 70s. And back then, they would literally sit in the green room and go, "Oh, are you doing the bit about getting breathalyzed? Yeah, oh, I won't do that one then. Are you doing this? Oh, I won't do that then." And they just used to, it's like just a
Wow.
communal part of like public domain jokes, and people, they would just like take them off the shelf, and that's how it worked back then. I don't know when that changed. Presumably in the 80s, when sort of alternative comedy
Mm,
and personality and politics and stuff started to take over. But now, yeah, absolutely, it is a golden rule that you don't steal someone else's joke. A lot of the time, it's not stealing; it's what we call parallel thinking. You've thought of the same thing as someone else. You're both doing a joke about it. They're so similar; they look like they could have been written by the same person. But in most cases, it's just a coincidence. And all that happens then is you kind of have a gentleman's agreement of, oh, have you been doing that joke a while? Oh yeah, 3 years. Oh, I only wrote it a month ago, so I'm going to ditch that. That's fair enough.
okay.
It has gone quite serious. There was two comedians in a dispute over a bit, and the person who allegedly stole the bit managed to get it on TV, and therefore a lot more people will have seen him doing this bit than the bloke who most people would say genuinely did write that probably a couple of years earlier. But there's no copyright, right? And particularly when
Mm,
it comes to a pun or a one-liner, it's quite likely someone else in the world has noticed that, that word sounds a bit like that word,
yeah.
and you just have to accept that that's going to happen sometimes. If you spot someone else doing something similar, the polite thing to do is you just drop it from your set. You're like, okay, fine, I'm not gonna do that anymore. Whereas I think in L&D, like if it's a model or a theory or a concept, I think it's fine to use it. You just cite your sources, right? You don't claim you've written it. You just go,
Yeah.
how many? I would imagine every single one of us in the industry at some point, for whatever reason, has talked about Maslow's hierarchy, right? But we're not
Yeah.
claiming we wrote it. We're just referring
Mm.
to, hey, here's a thing. This thing might be useful, right? And I don't see any issue with that. Obviously, you can't do that in comedy. I have seen it done. That was You just reminded me. Back in the early days, I did a gig in York, and the compere came on and went, "Oh, I don't really do comedy, but I love Bill Hicks. Here's one of his jokes." How weird is that? But yeah, you don't do it. There's a very minor exception to the rule, is when you're comparing, you're obviously working at a very fast rate, and if something pops in your head and you say it, sometimes afterwards you'll go, "Ah, I know why I said that. I've heard someone else do that as a joke." And it's
Okay.
kind of like, that's okay, because it was in the moment and it's never going to happen again. You're not preparing to say that. You just said something that popped in your head. It just so happened to be influenced by something someone else has said, and that's fine.
Yeah, I guess it kind of because you can't, like you say, you can't copyright
No.
ideas, but you can copyright when that idea turns into something more substantial and more yours. I mean, comedy's like you say, comedy's slightly different, but frameworks and whatever else. But there is something around that kind of once that piece becomes yours, it feels like it's part of you, right?
Yeah.
Like the work that you do, you have that. It is you. It's something you've put that effort into, and I just find it quite interesting that yeah, but it's easy to take someone's idea and everything is a remix nowadays anyway, that's what it is. But it's just, yeah, I think there must, again, I guess it's full circle on the whole fact of be humble, right? It's
Yeah.
like you might have had something, you might have heard something 3 months ago and not even acknowledged it. It's just gone in
Oh,
and
it
then it's,
definitely happens. Definitely happens. Or you
yeah,
read something, or something pops up on your Facebook feed, or it just goes in subliminally, and then you find yourself saying it, and you're like, "Where did that come from?" And then you go, "Ah, yeah, fair enough. I won't say that again." Or sometimes you'll write a bit, and it's not substantial bit. It might only be like a minute or something on a topic, and then you'll hear another comedian do a much better version, if you like, or take that
mm,
topic or that idea and do something better with it. And then you're like, well, I'm dropping it because his bit on that is way better than my bit on that. So, he gets that. Obviously, it depends how big the topic is. I mean, if we all decided nobody else could do a joke about online dating, we'd all be screwed. So, but it's not uncommon to go, oh, that's great. I really like how you've done that. Yeah, I'm ditching my bit now.
Nice. And I guess what's your take on I guess I want to use the word personas, but there's a piece of me where we go, we are different people depending on what mask we wear on a day to day. Danny right now, who hates a dentist, is all right. The mask I wear when I'm in a dentist is shit scared. The mask a bit like, and I guess when I think about comedians, there's Joe Wilcox and stuff who are kind of I've met once. I met him on a mountain in it was Snowdon. I had bright orange pants on for some reason, but anyway, and he was walking up there with his dog, and obviously the Joe Wilcox which you see on 8 out of 10 Cats is very different to the one who are seen walking up
Yeah,
there. Like, what's your take on that whole persona around? There's a thing of you getting up and putting on a show,
yeah.
but then there's the next level where people take on this persona and create this
Yeah, I
person.
mean, I really do like that. I know a lot of character acts, and I really admire it because they really sell it, and it's brilliant. I guess every comedian has that persona to some degree. So my stuff is broadly me, but in my set I'm single, which I'm not. Incidentally, same is true of my partner's set, so that's fair, right? Um, and there are a couple of gags where I'm the victim, and that's not true at all. There's a couple of things where I kind of make out I don't understand something, or it makes me look less intelligent. I like to kind of go at the low status end of comedy of, oh, look at me, what an idiot, is a middle-aged man, he doesn't even understand that. That's kind of
Yeah,
my persona. But yeah, some take it all the way to a full-on character. You know,
yeah.
and I love that. I've I've had an idea in my head that predates me doing comedy of doing a character act who is a trainer and doing all the horrible, dreadful icebreakers and activities and acronyms on a flip chart and getting them to do happy sheets and all of the rest of it. I've not written it, but in my head, I kind of know what he sounds like, and I kind of know
Mm.
the sort of things he's going to do. But I haven't had time to write it. I will do it one day.
It's and by the way, I think I said Joe Wilcox, Joe
Joe
Wilkinson
Wilkinson,
for them.
yes.
Yes, for them who are like that person doesn't exist. Um, but yeah, I've kind of been playing around with this idea as a failed HR rep. Like this is the idea where I've been playing around like, oh, but I like the fact that I could probably get behind a mask and be this person
Mm,
I'm not. Um, but then taking us back into work world, you know, I think we've probably all met people who are the person you see in work and then the person you see once you've had a beer.
mm,
I feel like they're two different
yeah.
people. And I guess you blend your L&D background, you blend the comedian, and then the business who owns the comedy nights. Like, but I think what I see with you, I get the full version of you. I get the full
Mm.
you. I guess when we have conversations, I enjoy that. What do you think gets in the way of these other people who kind of have this straight line of this is work me, this is
Yeah. Well, I guess all of us are a combination of who we naturally are, who we think we should be, and who we think we ought to be, right?
mm,
And I think to a different degree, everybody finds their own level of that. And I think I'm much more comfortable with who I am now than I was 20 years ago. I probably would have put much more of a front on. I would have towed the line a little bit, gone along with, oh, everybody else thinks this, so I'm going to promote that. Whereas now, if I see something that I just think is rubbish, I'm happy to call it out and go, I disagree. You may think that, but I just don't agree with you. Um, and I guess probably because I've reached a point in my life where the stakes aren't where they used to be. When I was building a career in L&D, particularly, I'd have been worried about stepping out of line and people going, "Oh, you're some kind of renegade." I think these days, actually, it's almost like it's the done thing, isn't it? To call things out and debunk stuff,
mm.
and you know, I'll be the first to admit I would almost guarantee at some point in my career I've talked about learning styles. I bet you I have, Can't remember it, but I bet I did when I started.
Mm,
In Dale's Cone, stuff like that. I bet I did it. But now I won't, because if I see it, I'll go, "Oh, you do know that that's actually a load of rubbish, right? So can we just ditch that?" And I have done it. I've been given content to work with from external providers, and I've said, "Well, I don't mind running this course, but that's going because I don't believe
mm,
it. It's not true, and I'm not going to stand up in front of a group and lie to them. So that's going." And I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago.
yeah. I think there's something around so when I'm running workshops or whatever, it's usually for EX. I'm like, you need to let go of your Lego bricks. And I think what I've noticed, and mainly on social media, I guess, but there's something around people hold on to an opinion. And it's like, just because you got that opinion, that is it. I'm like, no, if everyone else holds on to the opinion, nothing would ever
Yeah.
progress. Like, there's something around empowering. The idea of opinion is you can change your mind. Everyone's allowed to
Yeah,
change their
I
mind.
think you're right, but I think something happened in society about 10 years ago that meant that people stopped doing that. I don't know what
Yeah,
it was. Suddenly now opinions just get everything becomes a binary, right? And it's like it's this or it's this. You're left wing or you're right wing. You're Trump, you're not. You're Brexit, you're not. And it's like there's a whole massive gap in between there where nuance lives. And
mm,
we it seems like now I don't know why it is, and it probably benefits a first past the post electoral system to have people thinking that things can only be black or white, but it just isn't reality. But I think social media has amplified that a lot, and I think it is designed to do that. It forces you into an echo chamber, doesn't it? Soon
yeah.
as you demonstrate a belief in something, suddenly everybody seems to agree with you. And I do think that's a shame. You're absolutely right. We need to be debating stuff a lot more.
So I guess there's a couple of questions we've got, and I know I won't be mindful of time, but and it's going to take the conversation a little bit left, right, up, down. But I want to let's go with it. There's something around creativity for me. There's something around whether when I talk about experience design or design thinking, it's like macro, micro, nano. This is how you create experiences. This is what it looks like. And creativity is like comparing dots from here and dots there, what naturally don't go across, which is exactly what comedians do. Like they pair things together. Um, but, like, where do you go for your stimulus? Like, where do you go? Because I guess whether it be in the experiences you create in learning or the experiences and the stories and, like, do you do, like, full on human observation or, like, what's
Hmm.
do you take time out? Do you yeah.
Do you know what? I don't know. I think it's such an intuitive thing. I don't know. There are a lot of times in the day job where I'll be like, "No, don't do it like that. Do it like that," and someone will go, "Why?" And I go, "Just feels better," you know. And
Yeah.
and then they'll do it and go, "Yeah, you were right." Or sometimes they'll go, "Oh, I knew where you were coming from, but I disagree." And I'm like, "Well, that's fine. If that works for you, that's great. It's only an opinion. It's all I can share." So I think there's a lot of but having said that, right, intuition is underpinned by experience, isn't it? So I've
Mm,
seen things work and I've seen things not work. Somewhere in my brain, I've held on to that and gone, oh, if you do it that way, I think you'll get a better result than if you do it that way.
yeah. Nice. Um, your career, I was looking at your career from where you've come from, and like you say, it starts in learning, and then it's in comedy now, and you're still in learning. Um, and I think often we ask people like, tell us about your CV, and it's that thing of showing the best version of you in an interview or whatever. But I think there's more value to going, show me your failure
Mm.
CV. And I guess this is a two-part question. I want you to tell me about the biggest learning failure like in your learning world, and then tell me about the biggest failure or learning in your comedy world. Like what two stories come to
Mm.
mind?
Okay. So let's think. I think in this industry, my biggest failing has been that I am a better facilitator, experience designer, all of those stuff than I am a manager. I think I'm a decent leader. I think I can inspire people. I can share a vision. I can enable people to act and all that. I'm just not a great manager, and therefore I don't see that as being part of my future. I don't really want to be managing people again. That's just not. I don't think I had enough value. in that world, right? I think there's
Mm,
other things I can do better. That took a long while because the whole of corporate structures are built around be good at a job, manage a team who's good at a job, lead a function that's good at a job, become a director. That's how it works, right? And that's not me. It took me a long time to realize that that was throwing me off my path. So that would be my biggest learning. I'm not cut out to manage people. And comedy, it's a really good one. I guess my biggest learning, and every comedian should know this, is everybody's journey is different. So just because you've seen an act who might have started after you is now progressed, they're now headlining big clubs at the weekend. That doesn't mean you failed at your journey. That means they've succeeded at theirs. And
mm.
it's an awful cliche, but blowing out someone else's candle doesn't make yours burn any brighter, right? So focus on your journey. Your journey is different. If they're destined to be on telly in 5 years, they're destined to be on telly in 5 years. You may not do that, but enjoy what you do. Enjoy the process, right? Take every opportunity, every experience that comes your way. It will always lead to something. Me and Dawn, my partner, talk about this all the time. Like, we'll book a gig in the diary and we're like, why have we taken that? It's a million miles away. It's not paying. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's probably going to be badly run, and we will always go because you don't know where that's going to lead. And the amount of times that you rock up to a gig and you look around and go, "Oh my God, what have I let myself in for?" And it might not be that it's a great gig. Quite often, you'll be sat at the bar afterwards having a Diet Coke before you drive home, and someone will pop up and go, "Oh, I really enjoyed that," and you're like, "Oh, that's brilliant. That's really nice." In your mind it wasn't a great gig, and they go, "Because actually, I run a theatre down the road, and it's a 300 seat. I wondered if you might be interested in putting a comedy night on for me." And you're like, "Oh, that's why I was at this gig. That's
Yeah.
why I did that." So yeah, so don't see everybody's journey as a kind of a template, right? Enjoy the journey you're on. Take the opportunities as they come. Take every opportunity, right? Because something will come of it. Even you won't see it in the moment, but you'll look back and go, "Ah, that's why I did that. That's why that thing happened. That's why I bombed that night. That's why I took that gig." All of that will happen.
So I guess there's a somehow what I kind of needle in a little bit there. So you mentioned your partner
Yeah,
Dawn, right? So you say she in comedy as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
How does that work? Like, because in one respect, I'm like, oh my god, that's the ultimate sparring partner when it comes to kind of bouncing ideas around. But then is there a moment where you have to go, okay, we're talking shop too much, or like, how does that work?
That point hasn't come because we do talk shop a lot. But I think that's because it's not like a regular job, right? It's not like we're
Mm,
going, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what Janice from account said today." It's not that. It's "Oh, you were in you were doing a gig with Sol Bernstein on Friday night. Did you enjoy it?" "Oh God, yeah, he's amazing. He's a brilliant actor, and he was really helpful. And he told me how he started late in his life and how he gets on, and he was brilliant." And it's those sort of conversations that we have. Um, so it is helpful for bouncing off material because quite often one of us will watch it. We've seen each other hundreds of times. We gig together quite a lot. Obviously,
okay.
I promote nights, so I book Dawn fairly regularly. Um, and sometimes I'll go, "Oh, that was brilliant," and she'll go, "Yeah, what was it?" And I'm like, "When you said that, you just sold it." And they went for that, and I don't know what it is. There's one line that she's done. I can't even remember what the line is, but she started doing the intonation on it differently, and it gets a much bigger laugh. It's exactly the same words, but she just tonally just says it differently now, and it is brilliant. And you can't really explain that other than listen to how you said it tonight, because that works. And I wish I could remember what the line was, but out of context, it wouldn't make sense anyway. So yeah, we talk about comedy constantly.
I think you just hit a nail on the head, right? And which you opened up with right at the start, which is actually if you do the thing you love, it doesn't feel like
No,
work.
and
And
we always say that to each other. The minute this feels like work, we need to stop. We need to take a break.
mm,
If you're ever thinking, "Oh God, I've got to go to Sheffield and the traffic's going to be horrendous and it's probably going to be a crap gig anyway. Don't do it. Stop. Because you are, unless you are incredibly talented and very lucky and all the stars align, the chances of you making it big are minuscule. Like anybody playing football on a park on a Sunday morning, the chances of you playing at Wembley Stadium are quite slim. So
Okay.
enjoy playing on the park, right?
Yeah.
Now, statistically, somebody will get to Wembley Stadium. It won't be you if you stop playing on the park. That's definitely true.
Nice.
It almost certainly won't be you if you do. So just enjoy that, right? Just enjoy what you're doing, and who knows where it'll take you. You know, when I started this 5 years ago, it was just going to be a thing. And some of the opportunities I've had have been phenomenal. You know, I've gigged with people that have been on live at the Apollo numerous times. I opened for Paul Sinha from The Chase recently when he was doing an Edinburgh preview. You know, and I'm not saying that to name drop. What I'm saying is, if you go after your dream and just enjoy what you're doing, good things will happen, right? And you don't know what they're going to be, but something will happen, and it's worth taking that opportunity.
Nice. Nice. And I guess yours and Evan, your partner's comedy styles, are they the same? Are they slightly
There's
different?
definitely
Like,
an
is it?
overlap. So we both talk about life as a middle-aged, newly found singleton. I guess that's probably, because that happened to both of us. You know, the reason we met is we both just come out of relationships. So of course we're going to talk about that because that's a fairly big part of both of our lives, right? You know, this old cliche in comedy that tragedy plus time equals comedy, right? So something bad happens, and once you've processed it, it becomes really funny. So us both having relationships end is a really good source of material.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're talking about it from completely different perspectives. You know, I'm a man, she's a woman, so there is similarity. Um, and what's lovely is we've got an hour show that we do together. We're going to take to Edinburgh next year, and it's whilst we don't sort of signpost it at the beginning, what it effectively is two sides of the same story. So it's about her
Ah,
going through a
nice.
split up. It's about me going through a split up, and along the way, we both talk about meeting people, but we don't make it clear that we're talking about each other until the very last 5 minutes of the show, when suddenly the penny drops and people are like, "Oh, you're together!" So, and it's
Nice.
lovely. It's a great moment, and it's a lovely show. But even when we're gigging together, occasionally we can sort of reference each other because we know each other's sets backwards. She
Yeah.
does a thing about going on a dating website called Plenty of Bald Blokes Nobody Wants, and so then if I go on after her, then I can reference, I
That's
met
fun.
this woman on, Plenty of Hot Bald Blokes or something like that, you know. So, so we can
Oh,
do
I
that.
like that. Cool.
Sometimes when I'm comparing, if she's in a mischievous mood, sometimes during a set she'll be like, "What do you think of that compere? He's all right, isn't he?" Well, and then occasionally she go, "I've had him." That's quite nice. You know, we can have that little bit of play. Usually, the two worlds don't cross, and it's often at the end of a gig when we're kind of walking out the venue together that people are like, "Are you together?" So
Ah,
even
nice.
sometimes acts that we've not worked with
Yeah.
before, we'll be like, "Oh my god!"
There's something quite nice about that. I like that. I like the idea for Edinburgh. Like, there's a nice thread. You know what it reminded me of, and this don't know why I'm going to take it dark. Do you remember Stan, Eminem,
Mm,
the rapper? And he did the kind of two sides of that
yeah,
coin, right? Like he was, yeah. It's quite. It reminded me
yeah,
of that. It's quite
yeah. It's like
nice.
two threads, and then suddenly you go,
Yeah,
"Oh, they're talking about the same thing." Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There was
That's cool.
something kind of poetic about it. It's very nice to play with, and the two sets kind of stand alone as well. So
Yeah.
her 20 minutes and my 20 minutes are funny in their own right, and then you've got that interplay of, the two stories have just linked together, and isn't that lovely? And then we finish the show with a song, and it's quite good fun.
Awesome, awesome. That sounds right up my street, to be honest. Um, so I guess I asked you a question right at the start, which was, well, there's two questions. I asked you one around your friends and what did you say you're going to be, and then I asked you the question which you picked was number three, which was one life. What's one lie that you're still telling yourself?
It's a really
So let's go with that one.
it's a really good question. I guess the one lie I still tell myself is that I know what I'm doing, and most of the time I
Okay.
don't. But I
Okay.
like that. If there was one word that it's probably my favourite word, and if you listen back to this, you'll have heard me alluding to it numerous times. It's the word serendipity. I am
Okay.
such a believer in just allow things to fall into place, and that's where the magic happens, right? If you over plan and all the rest of it, so that's where I'm coming to. Like in my head, I convince myself that I've got my shit together, but I really haven't. But actually, I like that I haven't because that's how serendipity happens.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. I asked you the question around your friends, and if I was to ask three friends, what would you be when you grow up? Um, I guess if I was to reach out to them three friends again and say, you know, what's Anthony going to be when he grows up? What would they say now?
What would they say now? Well, I have reconnected with people that I've not seen from school, and it's been a real mixed response. Some of them have been like, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. You were always dead funny, right?" And
Okay.
some of them were like, "I would never have called that in a million years." So I must have had
Wow.
this different persona thing. I must have. Some people thought I was funny. I didn't think I was. I thought I was quite a serious child.
Interesting. So do you think they would turn around and go, yeah, he's gonna be a comedian, like full time, selling out kind of massive, massive gigs?
Oh, would they think that now? People outside of the industry think it's easier than it is. So you will
Yeah.
often get that. Oh, see you on live at the Apollo. Yeah, sure. Takes on average about 15 years to become an overnight success. So
Holy shit.
it's not going to happen. It's highly unlikely. Had I started as a teenager, yeah, I might have done it. But I'm 51 in a couple of weeks. Unless suddenly the whole of broadcast media suddenly finds 65-year-old men the thing that they want to put on TV, it is unlikely that I will hit the demographic they're looking for. But like I said, that's fine. If that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. I don't have lofty ambitions. I just want to enjoy it, and as long as I enjoy every gig, and by every I mean like most, really. You're always going to have a bad gig, but I've never had a gig so bad that I was like, I never want to do that again. So,
Mm,
as long as I keep enjoying it, I'm having fun, and I feel like I'm moving forward, that'll do. That's fine.
yeah. Okay. Okay. We have two questions, and then we'll have the bonus question later on. But I guess, um, the question which I've got right now is, you're speaking to um people like me, right? People who we've had a conversation for about 2 years around me wanting to do comedy. What tips would you give to someone like me? Maybe 4 or 5, but if we can't get there, whatever. Around someone who's kind of sitting on the fence around, I want to give this a go, but I'm not sure.
Do it. It's as simple as that. You will never be ready, so forget that idea. Just do it, feel it, and you will know by the time you step off stage whether it's for you or not. Even if you didn't do well, you'll still know
Mm,
whether it's for you because there is no feeling like it. I've never experienced anything like that rush of, and I've done other stuff that's performing. I've been in bands, and I've done singing, and I've done plenty of speaking gigs, learning tech and Earl's Court and around the world. It's not the same. There's something about that just raw energy of people find what I'm saying not only interesting but funny.
mm,
And yeah, there is nothing like it. So I would say anybody who's thinking about doing it, you only need a couple of minutes of material. Get on a stage, or do a course or something like that where you've got a nice safe space and they'll help you craft something. I didn't do that, but it's not a bad idea. And just get on stage and tell some jokes and see how you feel because you'll very, very quickly know whether it's for you. And it isn't for everybody. There are lots of acts that start, do half a dozen gigs, and then that's it. They give up.
yeah. Okay. Cool. There you go. There's some self advice for me. Some advice where I'm like, okay, I need to take this down. Where can people find you? So where can people find the professional
Yeah.
and the
So
comedian you?
professional me, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn is /Anthony J Williams, but I'm sure you'll find me if you look me up. Uh, my name and L&D. Comedy wise, pretty much everywhere I'm Anthony Williams Comedy. So Insta, Facebook, Threads, whatever's next, who knows? Or if it's easier, search for my company, which is called Rock Central, all one word. If you put in Rock Central Comedy or Rock Central Promotions, you'll find us. We've got loads of shows. Come and buy some tickets.
Hmm. Yes, yes, definitely go buy some tickets. I need to buy some tickets. I know. Last time I missed it. I think you were doing one up north, right? You were doing one
Yeah,
towards the Manchester end. I think when I spoke last time.
yeah.
So I need to. I definitely need to sort my lazy ass out and actually come
Well,
to
and
one.
likewise, I need to be less lazy and stop doing all my gigs in the East Midlands and start getting out. As I said, I was in Liverpool last night, and so I need to get up to the northwest a bit more. There's some great gigs in Manchester. The Frog and Bucket's obviously the best known, but there's some really nice. There's a literal underground club in Manchester that's absolutely brilliant in the Northern Quarter.
Ah,
It's called
okay.
Creatures Comedy, and it's at a pub called the Corner Boy. So
Right.
it's
Okay.
pretty well known. But yeah, 7 nights a week that is in the basement there, and it's it's got a real kind of New York proper comedy club vibe. It's dark and grungy and gritty. Only holds about
Nice.
50 people, and you're right up in the comedian's face. And it's built such a reputation that any really good comedian that's in town will just hop in and do some material there. So you could see people that, yeah, you'd see on live at the Apollo or headline in the Frog or what have you quite regularly there. It's a great little place.
Nice. Nice. Anthony, this has been a long time coming, and it's definitely paid off because I really enjoyed the
I've really
conversation.
enjoyed it. An hour and a half ago, I was like, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but there we go.
No, I usually I prep. I think we said earlier, like usually I prep all the questions ready, but I was like, no, actually, I'm just going to go with this because I think it's going to be an awesome conversation, and it definitely was. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's a pleasure.